Okay, so the roleplay station is probably the most scary station on the MMI circuit, and there's a good reason for that. It's the only station that you can't really prepare for, and yet it's also the station where you're going to be most uncomfortable at. The reason for that is it's essentially a drama station. You're given a character sheet and you're told to act out a particular scene with an interviewer. How on earth does that relate to being a doctor? Well, there are a lot of ways, and it's in some cases can be a really important station. So it's important you know the key rules behind it and the basics of the roleplay station, which is what we're going to go through, and how to execute and deliver these particular basics. That's what we're going to be talking about in this video. Sound good to you? Let's get into it. Okay, if you don't know who I am, my name's Akshi. I'm a second year medic at Imperial College London, and I've been making videos about the MMIs recently because it's MMI time, and a lot of you guys who I am not jealous of have to do your interviews now. In all honesty, your interviews aren't that scary, and for a lot of universities they are not the biggest hurdle, so if you have got to the interview stage, you've already done most of the work. But the roleplay station is a really important station to be aware of and know how to do. Now we're going to talk more about, things like how to talk about a scientific article or how to analyze a book that you've read in future videos, but the roleplay station is actually really important, and you have to have a few key basics down. So let's talk about what basics are. In the roleplay station, there's always the idea that you should be listening more than talking. As a GP, a hospital doctor, or even a medical student, when you're talking to a patient, there's always a key rule that you talk less than the patient. Or there's a good little sort of sentence to keep in your head. You should always be talking for about 25% of the conversation. Now that might not seem like a lot, but it's important to do this because that way you get the patient or the other person in this station to give you the information. They talk to you, they explain how they're feeling, and if you keep talking and not letting them explain what, they're trying to say, as a doctor, it won't look good on you because you won't have actually got a lot from the patient. The patient probably will come in to a clinic giving you their primary symptoms and the basics of what's wrong with them, but you need to be able to extract more than that from them, how it's been affecting them, what are some factors that could contribute to their illness, and also what could be the problem. And if you just talk throughout the whole of the interview or throughout the whole of your appointment as a GP, there's no way that you're going to be able to get that information. So you should always be making sure that you're talking for a lot less than the other person is. The basic number 2 is that it's not going to be a medical scenario. It's very unlikely. You do get some roleplay situations where you have, for example, you're going to tell a patient bad news, but it's likely it's going to be dressed up in a sort of different environment. So for example, you could be a barman who's working at a pub and you've run out of drinks and you've got to go and tell everyone that you've run out of drinks for the time being. Or you could be, for example, a barman at a different pub, but you've got to tell everyone the prices have gone up because you're running out of drinks now. See, in those scenarios, it sounds very different to what you do at a GP clinic or, for example, at A&E or urgent care, but in a way, it's pretty similar. You're giving bad news to somebody. Now, in order to be able to understand this, you need to be reading beyond the lines. Read the text, read the character sheet that you're given, stick to that scenario, but in the back of your mind think, how does this relate to medicine? How would I be doing this if I were a doctor and this situation were replicated in a clinic or hospital or a GP center? By doing that, you're always keeping in mind how this is going to relate to being a doctor and essentially what you need to be saying. A barman might lie, and a barman might say slightly different stuff to do with money and keep, profits at the front of their mind, which is important. If you're running a pub, you want to have profits, importantly, and that's normal. But as a doctor, your main issue isn't about profits or finance, your main issue is a patient. So you've got a different sort of mindset to what other people are going to be thinking in different jobs or occupations. So whilst you do need to keep in mind the character sheet, you also need to be running through your head, what would a doctor do if the situation were in a more medical environment? Biggest basic is never lie. In any situation, no matter what happens, you should never lie. If you are a doctor, if you are a GP, if you are a builder, if you are an accountant, if you're an engineer, no matter what role you're given, never lie. Even if your character has made a mistake and they need to admit to that mistake, do not lie, don't dress it up, get to the basics, get to the point, and admit your mistake. Apologize, and essentially just explain what you're going to do to fix it, how you're going to learn from it. Never ever lie in a roleplay station. That is the worst thing that you can do to start off your station. So please, if you're doing a roleplay station, do not lie. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how to execute and deliver what we've talked about in a real MMI. So the key to delivering these kind of things are to not make them so obvious. So if you're, for example, doing a roleplay station where you're a receptionist and you've been told that you have to tell a client that the accountant for that person isn't in today. Now, that might seem like a pretty simple scenario, but it's likely that the actor's going to get a little bit over-emotional, as is with any interview. Now, the key to this is handling it well. So the first thing, like we said, is keeping in mind how this could translate to a medical environment. The most likely way this will translate is telling a patient that their appointment's been delayed, or that they're going to have to wait to do another set of bloods, essentially something to do with time waste. So the key idea of time wasting is really important. The NHS is pressured at the moment, and patients are being made to wait for longer than most have ever had to. So time wasting is a really important thing, and it could come up in your character sheet, but you need to apply it to a medical scenario. So now you're thinking in your head, as a doctor, as a receptionist at a GP centre, or as a hospital doctor, how would you tell a patient that you've wasted their time, essentially? You always first admit the mistake. So you would always say, unfortunately, this person isn't here, you're unable to see them now, or we're going to have to cancel it. Get to the basics, get to the point. Obviously, at first you want to say hello, how are you, but don't waste too much time, don't beat around the bush with it. Get to the real point, get to the point of the matter. Apologize, it's really important that you do apologize. Say sorry, look like you're actually sorry as well. Don't start smiling and saying sorry, because that doesn't make any sense. Be sorry, frown, show empathy, and that is essentially the biggest part. Apologizing is really well appreciated if it's done right. If you show sarcasm, if you don't show empathy, if you go over the top, it can come across a little bit strange, and sometimes it can come across a little bit offensive. So you do want to be aware that when you're delivering your apology, you need to keep it to the right tone. It's a very vague thing that I'm saying, but you'll get this with practice, and I can't really explain it to you. Show empathy on your face, say sorry in the right tone, slowly, but not dragging it out for too long. Keep it to a couple of sentences. You do have to read the room. Different scenarios will require different amounts of apologizing normally. So for example, if you have just delayed an appointment, that'll require a little less apologizing. If you've had to cancel an appointment, that'll require a lot more apologizing. Then what you need to do is you need to deliver an alternative. So explain either what you've learned or an alternative. Now, in a receptionist who's having to deliver news that an appointment's been delayed, it's not really your mistake, so you can't learn anything from it, but you can deliver an alternative. You can suggest, for example, we can book you in at this time, or we can rearrange your appointment for you, or, we can get you in contact with them when they return, and we can sort out things from there. If you don't offer an alternative, you just said that they can't see you, and that's it. It doesn't help anyone, and it doesn't really resolve the situation very well. So make sure you always offer an alternative and carry that as the rest of the conversation. Keep apologizing. Remember, if they do get emotional again and again, even if you've apologized before, say that you're sorry, use different expressions, say that this must be tough, I do apologize, this is obviously not the situation we wanted to, happen, and do keep that empathy throughout the whole situation. Don't just stop being sorry as soon as you've apologized. Keep it going. Even when you explain the alternatives, do show some sorry, tones in your voice. Your speech should be pretty slow and simple, so that, it's carrying across that mood. Now, those are essentially the key things you need to do. So if we recap it, essentially you need to be, first of all, getting to the point, admitting the mistake. Second of all, apologizing. And third of all, either learning from the mistake and showing that, or offering up an alternative. Now, if you can do all of those as a basic template, it should give you a rough outline to what you need to do in a roleplay situation. And it pretty much applies to most of the stations. Now, yes, there are going to be a lot of variation in what stations you'll get, what situations. Some of you may not even have to do any apologizing, but mainly you will have to carry some sort of empathy. And I guess that's what's key to a roleplay station. Being honest, apologizing if it's needed, and also carrying empathy. And if you can do those three things, well, hopefully you should be able to do well in your roleplay. Now, I do hope that's helped you. It's been a pretty short video. I don't want to drag on for too long, and also I'm trying to squeeze this filming in between something. So I'm going to cut the video here. If you've got any questions, you can let me know down below. I will be doing other videos on COVID, scientific papers, scientific books, etc. for the MMIs, and also some non-MMI videos. So hopefully that balances things out for those of you who aren't doing interviews and maybe want to see some other videos. And yeah, if you've got any other ideas, let me know in the comments down below. If you want to get in contact with me, you can do so through Instagram. And yeah, I'll catch you all in the next video.